diner smelled of fresh coffee and fried bacon, but the mood inside was anything but warm. At the corner table near the window, a young woman in a wheelchair sat quietly, her eyes lowered, her hands nervously clenched in her lap. Her name was Rachel Thomas. Born with a spinal condition that had left her unable to walk since childhood, Rachel had grown used to stares from strangers, but never the cruel laughter that echoed across the restaurant that day. 3 young men in matching green jackets leaned against their booth, pointing and laughing at her. Their voices were loud enough for the whole diner to hear. "Look at her," one of them said mockingly, slouching in his seat as he imitated the way Rachel had wheeled herself in. Another snickered, "Bet she needs help just to hold a fork." The third one clutched his stomach, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. Rachel's face burned with humiliation. She pressed her lips together, trying not to cry, but the sting was overwhelming. She had come here just to enjoy a simple meal, not to become the target of someone else's cruel jokes. People around them noticed, yet no one spoke up. Some turned their heads away, pretending not to see, others just stared at their plates. And then the door opened. The sound of heavy boots striking the tiled floor drew every eye toward the entrance. A tall man walked in, his presence filling the small diner. His hair was long and sun-bleached, his beard thick, his arms covered in tattoos that told stories no one dared to ask about. Across the back of his black leather vest was the unmistakable patch of the Hells Angels. His name was Jack Mason. Jack ordered coffee at the counter, but as he waited, he caught sight of the scene unfolding by the window. His eyes, cold steel gray, narrowed as he saw Rachel shrinking into herself, the boys around her roaring with laughter, and something inside him snapped. Jack knew cruelty when he saw it. He had grown up with a younger sister who had struggled with disability, a girl who had been mocked by classmates until the day she died. He had promised himself that if he ever saw that kind of cruelty again, he wouldn't stay silent. He didn't. Jack pushed away from the counter and strode toward the boys' table. The sound of his boots grew louder with every step, and the laughter died instantly. The 3 young men stiffened, their smiles fading as they realized who was coming their way. Jack stopped right in front of them. His voice was low but carried like thunder. "You think you're funny." The tallest boy swallowed hard. "We were just joking around, man." "Joking?" Jack leaned forward, his tattooed arm pressing against the table. "You call humiliating a woman in a wheelchair a joke? That's not humor, that's cowardice." One of the boys tried to smirk, but his voice cracked. "It's not that serious." Jack slammed his palm against the table so hard the cups rattled. "Not that serious? That girl," he pointed toward Rachel, whose wide, tear-filled eyes were fixed on him, "has more strength getting out of bed every morning than all 3 of you combined. You laugh at her because you're weak, because you don't know what real courage looks like." The diner was dead silent now. Every patron watched, holding their breath. Jack straightened up, his broad shoulders towering over them. "If I ever hear about you treating someone like this again, you won't be laughing. Do I make myself clear?" The boys nodded furiously, their earlier arrogance gone. They grabbed their jackets and hurried out of the diner, their laughter silenced, their heads bowed. Jack turned back to Rachel. For a moment, the roughness in his face softened. He crouched down beside her wheelchair, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Don't let them take your spirit, sweetheart. You've got a kind of strength most people will never understand. Don't ever forget that." Rachel's lips trembled, but she managed a small smile. "Thank you," she whispered. Her eyes, though wet with tears, now carried a flicker of pride she hadn't felt in a long time. Jack nodded once, then stood and walked back to the counter as though nothing had happened. He didn't want thanks. He didn't need recognition. All he wanted was to keep a promise he had made long ago to never let cruelty go unchallenged. The diner slowly came back to life, but the air was different now. Patrons exchanged glances, some ashamed they hadn't spoken up, others inspired by the man who had. And Rachel, she sat a little taller in her chair, no longer shrinking into herself. When she wheeled out later, she carried more than just her belongings. She carried the memory of a stranger who had reminded her that dignity could never be taken away, not by laughter, not by cruelty, not by anyone. That night, as the neon lights of the diner flickered behind him, Jack Mason walked into the darkness, his leather jacket glistening with the last light of the day. To the world, he was a Hell's Angel. To Rachel, he was the man who taught everyone in that diner a lesson they would never forget.